Sonic Colors is shit. Wait, no, that's not in the script. Sonic Color is overrated is a sentence that my 10-year-old self never thought would be saying, but 10 years later, here we are. Back then, and well, actually even now, Sonic Colors is praised and liked a lot by the fan base.
Sonic Colors is a dizzying combination of the distantly familiar memories you have of the first few Sonic games, combined with thoughtful level design and excellently implemented new power-up abilities. It's one of the biggest surprises of the year. As a blueprint for the future of Sonic, Colors delivers and then some.
In fact, they received enough praise to get a remaster that took the form of Sonic Colors Ultimate, with more polished graphics, remixed soundtracks, a few extra modes, as well as some cosmetics. And this is why I'm going to talk about the Wii edition. But don't worry, I have good reasons for that. I don't like the remixed soundtracks. Okay, it's not just that, but I'll talk about it near the end of this review. But don't worry, I added some gecko codes that makes the game run at 60 FPS, as well as an HD texture pack so I can save your little puppy eyes from having a seizure. Alright, just a teeny tiny bit of context before I talk about the meat of this video. Sonic Colors came out in 2010, right after Sonic Unleashed, which despite getting mediocre scores has managed to save the franchise from the massacre that was Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06. Who is seen as one of the worst games of all time, by the way. And despite the HD version of Sonic Unleashed being the better version, the Wii version managed to sell more copies and have a better score. For some reason. This led to Sega and Nintendo striking a deal together, and this also meant that this game was going to be a Wii exclusive game. Therefore, the game was going to run on a toaster. But they didn't throw away Sonic Unleashed mechanics aside, and the trailer definitely showed them reusing it for this game. Sonic could boost, he could stomp, he could slide, and those mechanics would be used for the next decades of Sonic games, with an asterisk. And like I said, this game is loved. Now back to my original claim being that this game is overrated, and there's a lot of things that makes me say this. So strap yourself in, cause this is why. Let's start slowly and talk about the story and the writing. People may say that the story doesn't matter, and to a certain extent they're right. A lot of games have gotten away with bad stories because their gameplay was really good. Just look at Mario for example. Those games are really good for the most part despite having a story that can land in one sentence. Bowser kidnaps Peach, Mario goes to save him. Him? Oh shit.
I can smell you.
But in the case of Sonic, the story is taken more seriously, and therefore having a bad story can hurt the quality of the game, because it will base itself around the story. And there's plenty of Sonic games that benefited from good stories, for example Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Unleashed, heck even the Storybooks game, who people agree for the most part have mediocre gameplay, have benefited from it. But Sonic Colors' story is very simple, and to be honest it's not bad. The plot is very basic. Eggman tries to conquer 5 alien planets so he can capture them and use them as energy for a weapon. In order to be discreet about it, he builds an amusement park in the middle of space. Yeah, very clever man. The amusement park is used as a proof of redemption.
This amusement park has been constructed entirely out of a sense of remorse for my past transgressions.
But Sonic isn't fooled, and upon arriving at the amusement park, he discovers the intention of Eggman and tries to stop him. Like I said, a very simple plot. But you know what's bad though? The writing. The one word I can use to describe it is cringe. Back then, Sega made a couple changes to the team. They changed voice actors and writers. And oh boy, where do I start? Actually, let's talk about the writers themselves.
Sayako Yoshimura
Was the writer of the previous Sonic game, at that time being Sonic Unleashed, but she got replaced by 2 writers, Ken Pontac and Warren Graff. Warren Graff. An interview showed that the writers has zero knowledge about Sonic. I quote, "I sort of knew what he was about, but I know nothing about his history or anything, so I kinda went on Wikipedia and watched some cutscenes from various games on YouTube, but I really don't know anything about the chronology. And I must say, it really shows. Their personalities have been butchered. Sonic went from being energetic, cocky with a big heart, to an irritating clown that tries to spew out a joke every 5 seconds. Jokes that just drags on for ages. Tails became the generic smart guy that needs to remind the audience that he's smart, just in case we have forgotten it.
Gotta connect the framostatic capacitor to the maximizing modulationizer. It's in binary code, so only I can read it. If my math is correct, that leaves us 3 more of those bad boys.
And Eggman became your average goofy cartoon bad guy, which may I remind you, isn't what he was before.
Precious little aliens! I'll harness their hyper-go-on power, and then nothing will stop me. I know I say that every time.
Huh? When have you ever said that?
Stop me. What? Sonic!
Who you calling nothing?
What the fuck? He means since the boss said nothing will stop me, and Sonic here is going to stop him, it's like the boss was calling Sonic nothing.
Great! I thought nobody would get that. Guess it's time for me to start stopping.
I get it!
See what I mean by unfunny jokes that drags on for too long? Like, why are you explaining it to us? I get that it's a kid's game, but children aren't dumb enough that you need to explain such an obvious joke. I didn't emphasize the bad writing enough, you say? Alright then, as you wish!
Excuse me, giant killer robot? You want to do this the hard way or the easy way? Hey, Tails, you missed the BBBE. Best boss beating ever. You know, I don't like what you're doing to my friends in there. It's messed up, so I'm gonna mess you up. Hey, did somebody here order a clobbering? Are you sure? It says somebody ordered an extra large clobbering topped with everything. Okay, tell you what, I can't take this thing back, so I'll give you an extra large clobbering for nothing. Hope you're hungry. No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Please kill me. They literally made Sonic Blend Hero number 5, Tails generic smart sidekick number 9, and Eggman goofy incompetent villain number 11. And if you have played the previous games, then they became so unrecognizable that you could swap them for any cartoon character and the writing would have the same effect. Like, just peep this for a second.
That's pretty low, even for a sleazeball like Eggman. Well, I still can't believe he kidnapped a whole planet. How does somebody do that?
They're acting like this is one of the worst things Eggman has done before. Like, we're talking about a man that revived an ancient monster on multiple occasions, that blew up the moon, and that opened up the Earth into pieces. How is chaining 5 planets and enslaving a population worse? Like, maybe it's worse to your average Twitter user, but it's not the case, no. And just before I end this, a quick fun fact. The original script was written by Pontact and Graf, right? But during the transition to Japanese, Yasushi Otake...
Reiotake.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to fucking pronounce that. He realized how bad the script was and decided to rewrite almost everything. Like, I'm just going to show you a couple clips of some cutscenes, the first time in English and the second time in Japanese.
I think it's done. It's in binary code, so only I can read it.
もちろんだよ。機械を改造するのは得意だからね。
Please remember, all planets in Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park are, as far as you know, wholly owned properties of Eggman Enterprises and its subsidiaries. All unauthorized photography, video reproduction, or shutting down of generators is strictly prohibited. Thank you!
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens! No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me! We can save a lot of time and broken robots if you just quit now!
皆さん、エッグプラネットパークは全てエッグカンパニーのものです。全ての星と空気も水も木も草も全てわしのものじゃ。ジェネレーターを壊したやつはわしがきちんと仕返ししてやるのでな。注意するんじゃぞ。
やあ、エッグマン。お前こそ覚悟しておくんだな。ウィスプたちにひどいことしやがって。ここにあるものが全部お前のものでも俺には関係ない。今すぐ負けを認めれば時間とロボットを無駄にしないで済むぜ。
Hey, Tails?
Yeah?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Good, so it's not just me.
When I feel the ground shaking under my feet and see plumes of dust rising and rubble tumbling and aliens running for their lives, yeah, I get a bad feeling. So, how about you and me make like Eggman's hairline and recede?
This isn't joke time. This is running to the space elevator time.
Sorry, couldn't help myself. We're out of here.
Yeah, we're running now.
なあ、テイルス。
どうかしたの？
なんだか悪い予感がするぜ。
よかった。僕だけじゃなかったんだ。
地面は揺れるし、埃は立つし、ウィスプたちまで走り回ってるんだぜ。誰だって悪い予感がするだろう。こんなところで喋ってないで、さっさと走り出した方がいいんじゃないか？
僕はずっとそう思ってるよ。急いでスペースエレベーターに戻らなきゃ。
なんだ、それなら俺に構わず急いでくれ。
うん、先に行くよ。
As you can see, a lot of the dumb jokes are gone, and they don't try to overemphasize some action or just change some character's personality. Just look at the script changes for Tails. In English, he sounds like Mr. Smartass, but in Japanese, he sounds like a mechanic. You know, what he's actually supposed to be.
Yeah, I'll just stick with aliens if that's okay with everybody.
You were supposed to whisper that line, not spew it out like it's your normal conversation. Sonic even does the hand gesture. Actually, even worse, if you switch the game to Japanese, who is, you know, the only language available next to English, then Sonic whispers that line. Okay, I got my point across, I hope. The writing is garbage, the voice acting is subpar, and the story is just okay. In fact, the only good point I can really give the story is that it didn't use a sorry excuse to just make you use the Chaos Emerald and go Super Saiyan mode for the end boss, which is something the past games have consistently been doing. You know, it could also be just a coincidence since, you know, they have no experience with the story, so they probably didn't even realize that they did this. Like I mentioned earlier, the gameplay style is the one from Unleashed, with small changes.
Really, nigga?
You lost the ability to dash into a trail of rings, aka like speed dash, and the boost gauge is filled by collecting Wisp capsules instead of rings, making boosting more rare. On the plus side, you gain access to the double jump, which can be pretty handy in 2D platforming, but not so much in 3D because of the awkward horizontal drift it has. And well, that's not really an issue, because there's barely any 3D moments in this game. Like, I'm not even comfortable when people say this is a 3D Sonic game, because you really spend 80% of your time in 2D platforming. And when you finally came across one, it's usually the most linear and uninspired level design I've ever seen. The only thing coming close to it being Sonic Forces, and well, I don't think I need to explain why it's a bad thing. Like, look at this, it's just a hallway with no deviation, barely any verticality, barely any platforming, or extra routes. In fact, I can only think of two exceptions to that, one being that one extra route in Aquarium Park, which is really the only one, and this more open tower area in Starlight Carnival, where the game opens up a bit to allow for more original platforming. Okay, the 3D sections are bad, but what about the 2D ones? Are they any better? No, they're not. They're extremely flat, they're extremely blocky, and they're extremely dull. And this really limits the way you play. And because this game doesn't use momentum-based physics, it also just makes a lot of the 2D section uninteresting. Oh shoot, I almost forgot to talk about the Wisps. The Wisps is the name of the aliens you save, and they grant Sonic temporary ability, apart from one, which is the White Wisp. There are 7 others though.
Laser! Drill! Fuse! Hover! Spikes! Rocket! Frenzy!
Laser turns Sonic into, you guessed it, a laser. Drill helps you dig underground for collectibles or more 2D platforming. Cube helps Sonic smash blocks and turn blue rings into cube platforms and vice versa. Yes, they literally grant you the power to turn blocky platforms into even more blocky platforms. Lovely. Spike turns Sonic into a spiky ball who can attach itself to walls and ceilings. And pressing the boost button makes you do a spin dash. Odd that the Wisp gives Sonic one of his natural movesets, but considering that the boost is available, I don't really think you really need it outside of it. Rocket is, well, a rocket. It shoots you up in the sky. Hover helps you, well, hover. God, I feel like an idiot explaining these. You gain height by holding A, and boosting next to rings helps you do a dash into them. Hey, wait, hold on a minute. I can understand the spin dash being a Wisp exclusive move, since you don't really need it, but why make the light speed dash also a Wisp exclusive move? Like, this could have helped create less blocky 2D design. Oh well. And finally, you have Frenzy, who turns Sonic into a purple monster that smashes everything in front of you. Think about it like the Mega Mushroom in Super Mario Bros. During your first playthrough, you'll see colored transparent castles that will fill up with a Wisp when unlocking that set color Wisp. They did this to make the levels replayable because the Wisp can help you find new paths as well as red rings which unlock a bonus that I'll touch on later. And well, even if they do make the levels replayable, it's really just an artificial way of padding the replayability of this game. So, the Wisp, they do add to the gameplay, but is it good? Well, this is where the Wisp fall flat for me. They are nothing more than a gimmick, and even if the game made the smart decision of not forcing you to use them to complete the level, you can definitely tell that these levels have been made with the Wisp in mind. Instead of Sonic, you know, the character you're using the majority of the time. They just hurt the pace, and most of the time it feels like I'm watching a cutscene more than anything else. In fact, the only Wisp where I can say this are Drill and Spike. That's it. I know that Sonic Team just loves having the gimmick of the week in their games, but in my opinion, the Wisp are the worst gimmick they came up with, and it doesn't really help that they came back in future games. Thankfully, they're nowhere near as annoying, but still, I would appreciate if they never came back in the future. Well, okay, I talked about the level design and the gameplay, but I haven't really talked about the levels themselves. You play in 7 areas: Tropical Resort, Sweet Mountain, Starlight Carnival, Planet Wisp, Aquarium Park, and Asteroid Coaster. And kinda Terminal Velocity, although the last one is more of a final boss than an area, so I don't really count it, but I'll get on that later. The game being on a less powerful hardware meant that these levels weren't gonna look as good as Unleashed, but I gotta say, they did a pretty good job for the most part. Tropical Resort is probably the weakest looking out of them all, but even then, the level still looks really good. It recaptured the amusement park thing it was going with. Sweet Mountain is memorable, mostly because the idea of a world made of sweets and cake isn't something you just forget easily. Then there is Starlight Carnival, who is the most funky looking of them all. Not that it's a bad thing though, you could tell that the devs really tried to make something interesting with this one. Planet Wisp is a level I hate and love at the same time. It had so much potential to look insane, but it fell really flat really quickly. Like the name implies, it's the home of the Wisp. And it's a lot of wildlife, but Eggman conquered the planet and is transforming it into a factory-like area. And while the devs didn't take advantage of that whatsoever, you start the level in this forest area, but not even 10 seconds after you arrive at the factory and you proceed to spend the rest of your time in that factory for the entire area. It would have been way better if Sonic just started the first 2 levels in that forest-like area and progressively made his way into the factory. It will really emphasize how Eggman is transforming the planet. Such a missed opportunity, man. Then you have Aquarium Park, and I don't really have much to say about it other than it looks good. The water parts aren't annoying, which is something I couldn't say for a lot of games. The aesthetic is pretty pleasing, they took inspiration from the Japanese culture, well, it's just a pretty solid level. Aesthetic wise. Okay, then you have Asteroid Coaster, who looks really badass. It's the area where the Wisp are getting drained of their energy, and well, you hop in a space roller coaster, you traverse planet for planet. It's a lot of cool ideas, not gonna lie. And finally you have Terminal Velocity, which is just the area you have to go through when arriving at the park. And like I said, it's just the way to introduce the final boss. That's why you only have one level where you can only run, the boss fight, and then a sort of final level. Oh right, speaking of bosses, you get to fight one at the end of each area. There are 6 areas before the final boss, meaning that you have to fight 3 bosses. Huh? Wait, no, that's not right. Oh no, yeah, the game just decided that having 6 unique bosses was too difficult, and that it was better off cloning each bosses. You fight the Cyclops robot twice, this captain twice, and this airship twice. They might have slightly different alteration, making them a bit more complicated than the previous one, but it's still very lazy on their part. And the big eye robot is such a dog shit boss, you can even beat it in less than 20 seconds. Damn, so far it's not looking too great. Is there something even positive with this game? Well, I guess that there is the soundtrack. Something that this game did that I found really good is that they have different rendition of the level theme depending on the acts. Like peep this. That's a really cool detail, not gonna lie. But you know, there really isn't a way for me to talk about the music, so might as well just show you what I mean. Okay, what did I not talk about yet? Well, I guess I didn't talk about the final boss, and I don't really have a lot of things to say about it, apart from it's short. Like, the idea of the boss using Wisp power against you is very cool, but the moment you reach the second phase, the boss is practically over. In fact, you barely get to hear the second phase song too, and it's a shame because it's really good. You know what, actually something that is a neat idea is Gameland. This game has a collectible called Red Rings. When you collect a certain amount of them, a cutscene plays where you see them enter Gameland. This in turn gives you access to an 8-bit style level with an 8-bits version of the songs. And while sadly the level still suffers from the problem that the main levels suffer, being bad level design. But I find it more acceptable here given that it's a pretty cool novelty. If you collect every red ring, which I didn't do because I value my time, you get access to 21 levels in total, and upon completing them, you have the option to turn on Supersonic, which basically grants you the ability to turn super after collecting 50 rings. And while it's neat, I guess, I found Gameland to be a cool reward in itself, so I'm not saying no to extra cookies. Now that I've fully talked about the Wii version, let's talk about the remaster. Sonic Colors Ultimate. You may recall that I said that I didn't want to play this version of the game despite improving on some aspects. So let's just compare the two and see what's good and what's bad. First off, and the most obvious, is the graphics. They have been improved a lot compared to the Wii version. Although the textures are definitely better, I really dislike how the lighting has been handled in this game. There is an excessive amount of bloom, and a lot of the stuff is either really shiny or just really dark, and that's something the Wii did better. There is also another issue in the upscaling of the cutscenes. It has been made by an AI, and you can clearly see it. I'm not going to bitch about it too much, because I clearly understand that remaking the cutscenes from the ground up is very pricey and also really time consuming. Time being a resource that Blind Squirrel didn't have. After all, at launch the port was extremely buggy and obviously rushed. Thankfully they have dropped a lot of patches ever since, and now the game is nowhere near as buggy as it was, but there's still a decent amount of them. Then you have a couple of new additions, mainly the tail save, the Jade Wisp, the cosmetics, and finally the remixed music. The tail save is just a replacement for lives. The only difference is that when you die, Tails just deposits you on the stage and you get to keep your score and the red rings. I found that change not necessary, and to be honest it's just a time waster considering that Tails is awfully slow at picking you up and stuff. The Jade Wisp is a new wisp that helps you phase through some new areas you can access in the Wii version. Mainly is to obtain collectibles, and well, there was a reason that these areas were made out of bounds. They are not properly finished. You can even see texture popping, and the application of it is really limited, but I guess that they really capture the feel of the Wisp. Gimmicky. Then there is cosmetics that you can buy with yellow coins found in the levels, and to be honest it's a pretty cool addition. It's just too bad that it suffers from the new UI overhaul that just looks terrible. And finally we have the remix soundtracks, and to be fair some of them are slight improvement on the original, but some others just sounds inferior, and sometimes it straight up ruins the original feel of the song.
Squidward, all those wrong notes you play made it sound more original.
What? I didn't play any wrong notes.
Yeah, see, you're playing it like this. When ordinarily it goes like this. I'm partial to doing it in the key of A minor myself.
I didn't talk about the versus mode because it's a pretty simple race to the finish, presented very poorly with barely anything interesting about it. So to the versus mode, try again. You know, for a franchise that I mostly like, it's weird to introduce it to my channel with a game that I've mostly found negative. The reason for that is just that color makes me really curious. Like I said, this game is really appreciated, and for a very long time I was also one of those people that enjoyed colors. But upon replaying it in 2020, I just realized that the game that I held high was actually very flawed. The story is okay, the writing and voice acting is awful, the level design is dull, blocky and uninspired. Despite having great aesthetic, there is barely anything that is good / wasn't made better in other games. So I'm just left asking, why is this game considered good again? Like, I'm genuinely confused. If you're someone that likes colors but haven't played it recently, please go play it. And if you have played it recently, then please leave a comment explaining why you think this game is good. I would love to hear your opinion. As for me, I just don't think Sonic Colors holds up well. I know that I probably made it sound a lot worse than it actually is, but this game is really just that. Okay. If you wish to play it, then I recommend you the remastered version on PC with mods that helps you fix some of these issues I talked about earlier. And if you don't want to bother with that, then the next best thing is probably to run it through an emulator with an HD texture pack. And on that note is the end of the review. If you liked it, which you probably didn't and fucking disliked the moment I said it was overrated, consider dropping a like and a sub, that really helps me out. I'm trying to reach 1K before the end of this year, so if you can help me reach it, I would really appreciate it. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.